Welcome to the coming apocalypse. Evangelist and pastor Paul Begley will take you on a journey into the end times prophecy. He'll examine current world events and explain how they relate to the end times. For decades, Pastor Begley has provided people all over the world with an understanding of today's world events from a biblical perspective. Now here's your host, Pastor Paul Begley.
Calm down, but space wars are taking place right now. And I think America may be behind. I'll tell you about it in just a second, but first, noblegoldinvestment.com. That's www.noblegoldinvestment.com. If you're concerned about your 401k, do you see the stock market? I told you, not good right now, and all the indicators pointing the wrong way. Do you have your retirement fund, your 401k, all in the market? Oh, get all your eggs out of one basket. You can't do that. Diversify. You need noblegoldinvestment.com. That's www.noblegoldinvestment.com. Pick up the phone and call Colin Plume today at 877-646-5347. That's 877-646-5347. And tell him Pastor Paul Begley sent you there. All right. Here's the deal. Space wars. It's really on, guys. Right now, the senior U.S. Space Force official has stressed that China's new hypersonic weapon system is indeed orbital in nature and could be able to stay in space for an extended period of time. In other words, they just don't shoot it up there to take care of one issue. This thing is set up for an extended period of time, and this is the latest piece of official. One second here. I have a situation. Hang on one second here. It's an extended. This weapon can orbit around the Earth. So I keep thinking about they're going to shoot a missile up there. It goes and then it shoots where it wants to. It's like a rocket. No, it fired up there. It's even got the ability to fend off heat-seeking missiles, and it can orbit the Earth while still carrying its nuclear payload. You talk about dangerous and vicious. Well, they're telling us now that they have that capability. They also, this thing has a kind of a hypersonic glider, which may be capable of launching its own projectiles to actually execute a strike. Space Force Lieutenant General Chance Saltzman, the Deputy Chief of Space Operations for Operations Cyber and Nuclear, responded to questions about this new Chinese strategic weapon during an online event hosted by the Air Force Association's Mitchell Institute earlier today. And Saltzman, who transitioned from the Air Force to the Space Force last year, has overall responsibility for the operations, the intelligence, the sustainment, cyber, nuclear operations of the United States Space Force. This guy's probably the most important of all the commanders that we have in all of our military combined. He has a huge responsibility of a new war zone, space. He said, I think the words that we use are important so that we understand exactly what we're talking about here. Saltzman explained, I hear things like hypersonic missile and I hear suborbital missiles. Hypersonic speed is typically defined as anything above Mach 5. Suborbital refers to objects that may technically reach space, such as a more traditional intercontinental ballistic missile, but that do not enter any sort of orbit around the planet. This is a category different systems because a fractional orbit is different than a suborbit, okay? And a fractional orbit means it can stay on orbit as long as the user determines, and then it deorbits as part of a flight path to strike. So these are some of the weapon categorization by Saltzman of the United States Space Force. But now that we're talking capabilities, let's talk about imminent threats. And that's what takes us to Russia, because China has major capabilities, but so does Russia. Matter of fact, a shadow war is really taking place in space, and it's heating up fast. When Russia blows up a satellite in space with a missile, as it did this month, or when China can test a new hypersonic missile, as it did last month, the ongoing arms race in space leaps into the news, of course. But in between these Sputnik-like moments, folks, outside the public's view, the United States and its adversaries are battling in space every day. While Washington officials and experts warn the risk of arms race in space, the United States adversaries are constantly conducting operations against U.S. satellites that skirt the line between intelligence operations and acts of war. The pace of conflict is intensifying, according to a top Space Force general who told me that China could overtake the United States to become the #1 power in space by the end of the decade. And the threats are really growing and expanding every single day. And it's really an evolution of activity that's been happening for a long time. General David Thompson, the Space Force's first vice chief and space operations, told me in an interview on the sidelines of a recent Halifax International Security Forum that we're really at a point now where there's a whole host of ways that our space systems can be threatened. Matter of fact, right now, Space Force is dealing with what Thompson calls reversible attacks on U.S. government satellites, meaning attacks that don't permanently damage the satellites. Every single day, both China and Russia are regularly attacking U.S. satellites with non-kinetic means, including lasers, radio frequency jammers, cyber attacks against our satellites in space, guys. Thompson repeatedly declined, though, to comment on whether China or Russia has attacked a U.S. military satellite in a way that did permanent or significant damage, telling me that that would be classified if it had happened. The Chinese military is quickly deploying ground-based systems for doing battle in space, such as lasers that can damage U.S. intelligence community satellites. That would be considered an act of war. So it's heating up. Now, meanwhile, Russia has told the West that they better not even think about trying to cross the red line when it comes to Ukraine. Putin is warning that Moscow has a red line when it comes to Ukraine, and they're warning NATO. Russian President Vladimir Putin today sternly warned NATO against deploying its troops and weapons to Ukraine, saying it represents a red line for Russia and would trigger a strong response. Connecting and making a comment on the Western concerns about Russia's alleged intentions to invade Ukraine, he said that Moscow is equally worried about NATO's drills near its borders. Speaking to participants of an online investments forum, the Russian president said that NATO's eastern expansion has threatened Moscow's core security interests. He expressed concerns that NATO could eventually use the Ukrainian territory to deploy missile capabilities of reaching Russia's command and in command centers in 5 minutes. So he says he needs Ukraine, or Ukraine's like a buffer zone. But really what we're hearing here is that he wants Ukraine. We all know it, with 110,000 troops on the Ukrainian border. He added that Moscow has been forced to counter the growing threats, developing a new hypersonic missile that can go Mach 9. What? That might be the fastest of all. But he says this new hypersonic missile that is set to enter service with the Russian Navy early next year would be capable of reaching targets in comparable time, 5 minutes. So the Zircon hypersonic cruise missile capable of flying at 9 times the speed of sound, that's Mach 9, with a range of 1,000 kilometers, has undergone a series of tests, most recently just this past yesterday. So Ukrainians and Western officials are expressing concerns that Russia is going to take Ukraine and use the excuse that NATO's buildup in NATO countries is the reason that Russia may have to invade Ukraine. Guys, this is boot scooting Putin at his finest hour once again. I'm going to be back today later with some more current world events and how they relate to biblical prophecy. And so hang with me today. There won't be a 12 noon show as I was planning, but there will be one tomorrow at 12 noon. But I will be back later with more information. Brock Begley's here helping me put this video together. And don't forget to get your tickets for the armies of the Antichrist. And as we're talking about the armies that are gathering, they're not just only gathering on earth or sea or air, but in space. And think about what the Bible says about what the Lord saw coming. Ezekiel said it, and John said it. He's seen the Lord coming in the heavens, in space, coming with 10,000 of his saints. The war to be fought higher than we think. Let's keep that in mind. Armies of the Antichrist are gathering. I'll be back with you more. Get your tickets today. God bless. Just released information from this powerful conference, Aliens, AI, and the Antichrist. A strong, in-depth study with some of the greatest scientific minds and biblical scholars on the reality of aliens, AI, the Antichrist, the biblical explanation of the end days. Prophetically packaged. Get your copy of it now at my website. Do it now. It's ready to go.